gestures and all that. So we are supposed to see you. So it will be to your disadvantage if your video is off. So we will just entreat you to make yourself ready to get your video on. And I want to tell you that we're going to be live on our YouTube page, Nooks Ukraine YouTube page, and also on Radio Power UA. So we're going to get a lot of other people following this particular debate. So I just wish you all the best. So immediately your name changes, we are going to start. So we are just waiting for you. Waiting for Sumi's name to be changed. Yeah, I think it's a pretty simple thing. You go to that three dots on your upper right corner, then you can just rename it. It's a pretty simple thing. What are you struggling with? Waiting for Sumi's name to be changed. Yeah, right. All right, so good evening to you all, and you are most welcome to the semi-final contest of our maiden debate competition of Nooks Ukraine. And it's a pleasure to come your way again. If you recall our elimination phase, how interesting it was and how educative that event was. Now we are privileged to come your way again with the semi-final contest. We're going to have a semi-final contest between Nooks Sumy and Nooks Lviv. Just excited to tell you that we have one finalist. Just sad to let you know that we got Nooks Vinica backing off at the late hour, so it gives Nooks Kharkov the automatic qualification for the finals. So congratulations from the academic directorate to Nooks Kharkov to have booked his place in the grand finale on Saturday, 27th June. And in this contest between Nooks Sumy and Nooks Lviv, we are going to get their other finalists or other team that is going to meet Nooks Kharkov. And these guys are very great. They have a great prowess in debating, and it's going to be exciting and amazing time today in debating. And if you just join us via Radio Power UA or via our YouTube channel, you will want to get glued to your seat and follow everything that is going on and share the link to as many people you can reach to also follow and be educated and just with the level of oration and research that these guys have been able to just gather. So it's a pleasure to come here again, to come to you again. So with me here, we have Nux Lviv, and we have two representatives, and I'll just call them to introduce themselves. Nux Lviv, who are representing you guys?
Okay, Nux Lviv is represented by Miss Ifwa Baini.
And Emmanuel Mensah.
Emmanuel Mensah. Right, so we have Miss Ifwa Baini and Emmanuel Mensah representing Nux Lviv. It's a pleasure to have you, Miss Baini and Emmanuel. I mean, we can't wait to listen to such great oration and great research that findings from you. It's a pleasure to have met you in the semi-final contest. Thank you. Nux Lviv, sorry, Nux Sumi being represented by
Yapoma Inieji and
Boating Benjamin Kweje.
Right, so we have Nux Sumi being represented by Yapoma and Boating Benjamin. It's a pleasure to also have you, Nux Sumi. We know what you two can do, both Lviv and Sumi. I know what you guys can do, and I wish you all the best. And I just hope that the best is going to win and win very successfully. We have 3 judges, and they are going to give their judgment very fairly and without any kind of partiality whatsoever. So I would admonish you to just follow suit. Our contest is going to be in this format. Now, we are using a modified version of the British parliamentary style, modified in so many ways. One of the ways is that the contestants were given the topic several days before this contest, which is different from the straight British parliamentary style of getting the topic 15 minutes in preparation before you just do the presentation. Another thing is our scoring system is going to differ as well. And also we are going to have it in such a way that we're going to have a principal speaker coming out to speak for 10 minutes. We're also going to have the supporting speaker coming out to speak for 7 minutes. Then we are going to have the summary by either of them. So either of them that will be chosen to give the summary will now go on to give such. So that is pretty much how it's going to be. And I'm excited to let you understand that the topic or the theme for this particular contest is a very interesting one. And I'm so eager to get to know the oration skills that is going to follow suit. So the topic is that Africa beyond aid is a horse in such a neo-colonialist continent. Let me take it again. Africa beyond aid is a horse in such a neo-colonialist continent. So that is a topic for today. And I pretty much hope that we are gonna get great ideas, great insight into this particular structure. Without spending much time, we're gonna go forward and just start a contest. So let me have your videos on, contestants. Let me have your videos on. Right, so Africa beyond aid is a horse in such a neo-colonialist continent. Sumi speaking for, Lviv speaking against with this particular topic. And we're going to start. If my judges are ready, you can give me a thumbs up. You can give me a thumbs up. If my judges are ready, give me a thumbs up. Right, Judge 3 is ready. Judge 1 is ready, Judge 2 is ready. Right, so everything is set. We are live on Radio Power UA. We are also live on our YouTube channel at Nux Ukraine. We're gonna start a contest between Nux Lviv and Nux Sumi on the topic Africa beyond aid is a horse in such a neo-colonialist continent. Sumi speaking for, Lviv speaking against. We're going to start with the first or the principal speaker for Sumi, and that speaker is going to have 10 minutes for which he or she is going to speak on that particular topic. If you are ready, Sumi, your time. Your time starts now.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, panel of judges, timekeeper, co-debaters, ladies and gentlemen, the motion for this debate is Africa Beyond Aid is a hoax in such a neo-colonialist continent, of which I speak for the motion. To begin with, I'd like to explain a few terms used in the debate in order to make it easy for all to understand. A hoax is a humorous or malicious deception. Neocolonialism refers to the use of economic, political, cultural, and or other pressures to control or influence other countries, especially former dependencies. It can also be defined as a continuation of the economic model of colonialism after a colonized territory has achieved formal political independence. Hence, the motion can be restructured as Africa without aid is a deception in a continent where there is a substantial political, economic, and cultural influences from other parts of the world, and also pressures are used in controlling former dependent countries. The causes of neocolonialism in Africa include weakened positions of powers, rise of consciousness against imperialism, the needs of the developed states, the continued dependence of new states or developed states, impact of Cold War, the policies of the USA and the erstwhile Soviet Union. First and foremost, Mr. Chairman, out of the 54 countries in Africa, only 2 are believed to be by scholars to have never been colonized. That is Liberia and Ethiopia. This is to say that about 95% of countries in the African continent have been dependent one point in time. These countries in the continent were under colonial rule by Western nations for decades. And prior to that, the African continent had also suffered under the inhuman slave trade. During the era of colonialism, the African continent became the source of raw materials and minerals for the industrial world, particularly the Western world. Raw materials like cocoa, coffee, timber, among others, were shipped to the Western world by the colonial masters to feed their industries, and also it created jobs for their people. Other natural resources like gold, diamond, bauxite, copper, and more were also exploited on the African continent and shipped to the West by Africa's colonial masters to feed their industries. The African continent, therefore, became an integral part of the countries which colonized Africa. The imperial powers found it difficult to justify the continuance of their rule over colonies because of the spread of political consciousness and the acceptance of the right to self-determination by the Charter of the United Nations. After having suffered the loss of their empires, the rich and powerful states were quick to adopt new means for maintaining a system of economic exploitation of their former colonies. Hence, they created ways to tie our economy to theirs in order to continually receive these benefits. Therefore, even though African countries were given political independence, most of African countries haven't received total liberation. More so, Mr. Chairman, Africa Beyond Aid is not realistic and just a fallacy, as the economies of African continents are tied to the economies of her colonial masters. The continued need for raw materials and markets for selling their goods compelled the former imperial powers to somehow maintain their economic domination of new sovereign states. This impelled them to maintain their interests by new subtle and indirect economic devices. Having been forced to abandon the old colonial system, the old imperial states decided to go in for neocolonialism, which is a systemized but indirect and subtle economic and political domination of their former colonies. The most common device which they adopted for this purpose was to break up the former large united colonial territories into a number of small non-viable states, which were incapable of independent economic development. The new small states had to rely upon their former colonial masters for their economic and security needs. It is said that the economies of the African continent are neo-colonialist ones. In 2008, South Korea multinational Daewoo Logistics secured 1.3 million hectares of farmland in Madagascar to grow maize and crops for biofuels. Roughly half of the country's arable land, as well as rainforests, were to be converted into palm and corn monocultures, producing food for export from a country where a third of the population and 50% of children under 5 are malnourished, using South African workers instead of locals. Local residents were not consulted or informed. Despite being dependent on this land for food and income, the controversial deal played a major part in prolonged anti-government protests that resulted in over 100 deaths. This was a source of popular resentment that contributed to the fall of the then president, Marc Ravalomanana. The new president, Andry Rajoelina, cancelled the deal. Tanzania later announced that South Korea was in talks of developing 100,000 hectares for food production and processed for 700 to 800 billion won. Scheduled to be completed in 2010, it was to be the largest single piece of overseas South Korean agricultural infrastructure ever built. The country Madagascar is a country where a third of the population and 50% of the children under 5 are malnourished. And if the land where they can cultivate the food for their inhabitants, then what will such a country have to seek than to seek for aid from external sources in order to feed their already hungry population? How then can they be free from aid? Another point worth noting, Mr. Chairman, Africa is still influenced culturally by other countries. Westernism is a coinage from the word westernize, which refers to the act of bringing ideas or ways of life that are typical of Western Europe and North America to other countries. Therefore, Western culture connotes the knowledge, belief, morals, and way of life of the Western world. Types of culture is divided into 2 broad categories, using such terminologies as material and non-material culture to depict its distinctiveness. Material culture is the aspect of culture that is observable and overt, relating to the tangible products of art, technology, craftsmanship, industry, skill, etc., which can be seen, or the visible possession of man in society. Examples of material culture include artifacts such as farm implements, fishing implements, among others. These are physical, tangible, and noticeable culture artifacts of any society. Thus, material culture consists of those objects which people have invented to meet their needs in the society. Non-material culture, on the other hand, is the aspects of culture that is intangible but is noticeable through psychological state of mind and manners of a people. These include such aspects as language, attitudes, moral, values, habits, philosophy, knowledge, principles, and conventions. The material and non-material aspects of culture together form the totality of the way of life of a people. The Global Equity Fund, GEF, is a leading public-private partnership comprised of like-minded governments and private sector entities dedicated to protecting and defending the human rights and fundamental freedoms of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and intersex LGBTI persons around the world. The fund has been provided to contribute to the strengthening of rights of persons and groups that often are in one of the most vulnerable situations in those countries. The fund was established in 2011 by the United States of America and is governed by the U.S. State Department in cooperation with the NGO Consortium and donor countries. GEF supports programs that promote LGBTI issues and the rights of LGBTI people globally. GEF also supports civil society through the following 3 areas: capacity building and technical support through Dignity for All Fund, and through small grants to the local NGOs. The African continent is known to uphold good moral values and doesn't allow such immoral practices, but these funds given to certain nations have been mandated to use these funds to help raise the awareness of LGBTI in their continent. We depend on them for money, and they tell us how to live our lives. Mr. Chairman, the hopes of an Africa Beyond Aid is compounded in the educational sector. The educational sector, which involves research and groundbreaking discoveries, which need certification of the Western world before we can use what we have discovered for ourselves. We depend on the Western world for the go ahead when we make new discoveries. In this pandemic era, we have seen the emergence of vaccine in DR Congo, which needs certification from Western agencies before we can use it. For example, the health authorities in Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, have announced plans to introduce a second experimental Ebola vaccine manufactured by Johnson & Johnson from mid-October. This vaccine, which is given a second dose 56 days apart, will be provided under approved protocols to a targeted at-risk population in areas where they do not have active Ebola transmission, as an additional tool to extend protection against the virus. The DRC authorities, in deciding to deploy the second experimental vaccine to extend protection against this deadly virus, we have once again shown leadership and their determination to end this outbreak as soon as possible, said HWO Director General Dr. Tedros Adhanom. The major pharmaceutical companies that are in this world are based in US and Europe, and we have to depend on them providing drugs for the continent. Even after making a headway, there is still the dependence on them for the go ahead and headway in making treatments to diseases in the African continent. Mr. Chairman, Africa Beyond Aid is a fallacy in such a neo-colonialist era, and we can keep dreaming of it, but only to see it when we fall asleep. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can keep dreaming on it and only to notice that you fall asleep. Is that what you ended with? Right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, for such a great one. And that was the principal speaker for the motion from Nooks Sumi. Now we're going to have the principal speaker against the motion from Nooks Lviv. Let's hear you.
Mr. Chairman, panel of judges, timekeeper, fellow debaters, listeners, ladies and gentlemen, the motion before the House is Africa Beyond Aid is a hoax in such a neo-colonialist continent. I am Ms. Ifeabaini, principal speaker from the Nooks Lviv team, and I would like to speak vehemently against the motion, quoting directly that Africa actually is doing well managing its own affairs without extending its arms to foreign aid. Mr. Chairman, before I draw the reasons to my aforementioned statement, my learned opponent has said numerous things and have brought up obvious and clear points that Africa is still living under the umbrella of taking foreign aid from other developed countries in order to develop our continent, missing the point, speaking more of neocolonialism and not foreign aid. Let us not be oblivious of the fact that Africa is actually doing well exclusively without the need of foreign aid, although I will give a full appraisal to the African countries, but will deny a full appraisal to the African leaders. This leads me to state emphatically that foreign aid has got nothing on Africa, and that if Africa is to be developed, then we need to change the narrative of our poorly constructed, nepotized, insatiable, and failing leadership. Mr. Chairman, let me reiterate. Foreign aid has got nothing on Africa, and that if Africa is to be developed, then we need to change the narrative of our poorly constructed, nepotized, insatiable, and failing leadership. In the wake of recent calls for an Africa Beyond Aid by Ghana's president, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, it is important to restate an international relations reality. Any ambitious international economic or political program requires genuine commitments to responsible governance at home. At a Royal Africa Society event in London on the 21st of November 2017, Ghana's president, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo declared, and I quote, "We shall move Africa beyond aid," unquote. On 30th November, the president repeated this solemn commitment at a joint press conference with French President Emmanuel Macron in Accra. Nana Akufo-Addo surprised his French counterpart with a scathing diplomatic rebellion, and I quote, "We have to get away from this mindset of dependence, this mindset about what can France do for us," unquote. Africa does not want to be pitied and become pawns or victim, the president added. On this strong note, it is apparent that an African leader, the Honorable President of Ghana, recognized the fact that foreign aid is not the problem of Africa, and that if we as a nation, we as a continent, change our mindset towards being dependent, would achieve more than we could ever, because Africa as a continent is well graced and equipped with an astronomical amount of resources, both in terms of human and natural resources. The natural resource economy of Africa greatly contributes to the building and structures constructed on the continent, and many European, Asian, and American descent. Some of the largest engineering projects are linked to the trade of resources like oils and minerals, and large quantities of natural resources are exported to other countries. Metals exported from Africa include uranium, platinum, nickel, bauxite, and cobalt. Two of the most profitable mineral exports are gold and diamond. The continent can produce close to 500 tons of gold a year and is responsible for a large percentage of the world's diamond. Yes, largest percentage of the world's diamond. Now, listen attentively. In 2018, cocoa beans were the world's 346th most traded product, with a total trade of $9.2 billion US. Between 2017 and 2018, the export of cocoa beans decreased by 1.58% from $9.35 billion to $9.2 billion. Trade in cocoa beans represents 0.05 of the total world trade. Exports. In 2018, the top exports of cocoa beans were Cote d'Ivoire, $3.5 billion, Ghana, $1.78 billion, Ecuador, $674 million, Nigeria, $621 million, and Cameroon, $492 million, with a total of 4 African countries in the top 5. Imports. In 2018, the top importers of cocoa beans were the Netherlands, $2.15 billion, Germany, $1 billion, United States, $927 million, Malaysia, $812 million, and Indonesia, $628 million, with non-African countries comprising the top 5 importers, according to the Observatory of Economic Complexity, OEC, in 2019. Now, when you lick a bar of chocolate, or when you buy one for your beloved, just know that it is the likes of African giants that have made it possible single-handedly. I can boldly say that foreign aid has got nothing on Africa, and that if Africa is to be developed, then we need to change the narrative of our poorly constructed, nepotized, insatiable, and failing leadership, because we have got everything in our motherland. How do we miss all these numbers? How come instead foreign countries are profiting billions from African products? Why is this not being made known to the general public, but rather news about other African countries seeking aid is publicized? Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, I would like to vehemently refute the term foreign aid used in this context, of which it is obvious that Africa is literally not dealing in aid from developing countries, but rather Africa is involved in a business scheme with foreign countries. Africa is a very good investment hub. Multinational enterprises from developed countries are expanding their activities in Africa, and investors from developed countries like France remain the key players. Actually, the problem is not Africa depending on foreign aid, but the foreigners playing smart on African leaders. Most Europeans, Americans, and Asians invest huge sum of capital resource into Africa without the aim of acquiring more profit. Now, to my dear learned opponent, would you call this aid or investment? This is a simple English term of which I know a basic school student would know. Many foreigners instead invest capitals in the human and natural resource of Africa, and we Africans in turn interpret it and call it foreign aid, forgetting that the foreigners rather stand a chance of losing more or gaining more if a profit or loss is recorded. Take a look at the cocoa incident and how the Netherlands stands a whopping $2.15 billion in our import of cocoa, only not to talk about other resources like gold, diamond, etc. Only if our leaders utilize our resources wisely, like a country like UAE, like we wouldn't have been having this argument today. Based on data through 2017, France is the largest investor in Africa, not the largest giver, although its stock of investment has remained largely unchanged since 2013, followed by Netherlands, the United States, the United Kingdom, and China. Growing demand and corresponding rise in the price of commodities, of which Africa is a key producer, are expected to prop up FDI flows to the continent. While investment in manufacturing and service by foreigners is likely to be sustained, this is expected to be confined to a few countries in North and Southern Africa and the emerging manufacturing hubs in East Africa. Africa escaped the global decline in FDI as flows to the continent rose to $46 billion in 2018, an increase of 11% on the previous year, according to United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. Mr. Chairman, until we understand that China and other countries are not aiding Africa in any way, but instead are investing in Africa with the idea of gaining more profits and exploiting us, then we are still going to argue about this motion. Africa Beyond Aid is a hoax in such a neo-colonialist continent in our future generation. Please listen with rapt attention. The facts are clear. The top 5 countries in Africa with the largest current Chinese debt are Angola, $25 billion, Ethiopia, $13.5 billion, Zambia, $7.4 billion, the Republic of Congo, $7.3 billion, and North Sudan, $6.4 billion, with China in a prosperous position to receive a whopping profit of $59.7 billion from only these 5 African countries. And it's funny we are still calling this African aid. No, absolutely no. This is not foreign aid, but rather this is a tactical, sensible investment by China. Kudos to their leadership for exploiting us, deceiving our leaders with the basic term aid. Mr. Chairman, I would gladly accept defeat if the motion was instead, Africa beyond foreign investment is such a hoax in such a neo-colonialist continent. It just doesn't make sense if they say they are helping us, but rather they are profiting from us. Does it? Honestly, I don't see anything wrong with Africa joining the race of the world of investment. And with all due respect, I don't blame my co-debaters for seeing investing as aid because of the colossal action the media plays in all of this. And this brings me to my next point. That is the obvious action of the media playing in conveying information across the world. With all these great achievements overlooked, the Broadcasting Corporation are showing news about abject poverty from Africa, famine, natural disasters, instead of creating the impression that Africa indeed is a poor continent and that we need aid in order to develop. Mr. Chairman, I would like to end my main speech with Africa is actually doing well with managing its own affairs without extending its arms to foreign aid. Africa beyond aid is not a hoax, but rather a reality based on the valid points I have given. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for such an awesome time. If you just join us, you are with us in this contest. It's been heated up. I mean, these principal speakers are just amazing. I just can't believe that they just had 10 minutes to just let us hear very sweet words, great research structures, and I mean, just amazing. I'm impressed with both of you, and that is exactly how and what we are grooming our NUCS Ukraine students to be. I mean, apt in debating and so great in oration as well, and very invested in research. So thank you that you just joined us so we can share the link and for others to join in, and we will just enjoy as time goes on. So we are moving straight to the supporting speakers. Now, supporting speakers are going to have 7 minutes each in which to support their principal speakers. So going on with the supporting speaker for NUCS Sumi, let us hear you for 7 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, panel of judges, timekeeper, co-debaters, ladies and gentlemen. The motion for the debate is African beyond aid. It's a hoax in such a neo-colonialist continent of which I speak for the motion. I'm the supporting speaker. I've heard my opponent say time without number that there's a difference between aid and investment. I want my opponent to broaden the scope of knowledge. When we talk about aid, we are not talking about monetary. It's not only limited to money. When we talk about aid, it has to do with help. And so you can talk about investing money, you can talk about practical things. And so when you say time without number, you keep repeating yourself and difference between aid and investment, and you limit yourself to money, then I expect you to broaden your horizon and talk about other factors. When we go into the education center, we see the Western world provide educational opportunities to Africa. Africa then decides to migrate most of its students to the Western world. Why? Because they believe that the educational sector in there, the educational system in there is better than ours. When these African students get there, after finishing or after educating themselves with the technical know-how that they get, do they come back? We find so many students deciding to live in these countries. When they live in these countries, what is happening to the youth or the working population of Africa? The African continent loses the working population. And then if the working population of a single continent is being lost, who is going to develop the nation? Is it the old men and the old women who are struggling with their rods that are going to help develop the nation? These are people that are going, then the African continent has to go back to our Western world in order to ask for aid for us to come and develop this. Our own continent. And so when you come and you are making issues of monetary, I want you should not talk about monetary. Aid is not just money. Aid can fall in any aspect of life. And so do not limit yourself to investment and African beyond aid and all that. You made mention, my opponent again made mention of the fact that the President of the Republic of Ghana, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, yes, has said time without number that yes, African beyond aid we can do it. But again, I want to bring your mind to this fact that even the same president who said that African beyond aid, yes, it's of course it's possible that we can do that. I want to bring your mind to this. For example, as part of a memorandum signed between Ghana and China, Beijing will invest will finance $2 billion worth of railroad and bridge networks. And in exchange, China will be granted access 5% of Ghana's bauxite reserve. This happened within the 4 years in which President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo was to be president. The same president again who has come out vehemently and is speaking about Africa beyond aid. The fact and the statistics on the ground is within his own government, this is happening. And so if he's talking about Africa, yes, we can applaud him for that. But what are the statistics on the ground? We are dealing with statistics. You put the facts on the ground and we know what is actually happening. But when you want to come and give us a lecture, and you want to come and say so many things about Africa beyond aid, brother, we are going to put you within the 4 years that you worked. Did you do what you said, or you only came to throw dust into our eyes? That is what we are talking about. Again, when we look at my opponent talked about the fact that, yes, Africa is developing, and foreign aid has nothing to do with neocolonialism. I want us to understand the topic. Africa beyond aid is a hoax in such a neo-colonialist era. The neo-colonialism that we are talking about is an indirect way of influencing or controlling someone. Well, you can provide help to somebody, and with knowing that the person is at his weakest point, then you decide to exploit the negatives of a person, or you decide to exploit the weakness of the person. When you go to some investment, or when you even go to companies, you see they have what we call SWOT analysis. S stands for strength, W stands for weakness, O stands for opportunity, T stands for threats. The weakness that are available in this, they make sure that they are going to strengthen their weaknesses. Because if you leave your weaknesses, other companies or other people that are within your sector are going to exploit your weakness, and they're going to make sure that, well, you come back falling on them. This has nothing to do with investment. Exploiting the weakness of a person has nothing to do with investment. Why? Because the person is using your investment to his own gain. And we are not talking about monetary issues, because it is not only money that you can use to exploit the weakness of person. You can use knowledge. If you find out that somebody is not knowledgeable in something, you can use the weakness of the person. Here we are debating. If I find out that you are weak in a certain side, I exploit the weakness and I'm on it and I win. This has nothing to do with investment. Or you are going to call me knowledge investment. Knowledge investment maybe has to do with reading books. And so if you are talking about investment and you think investment is all about money, aid is all about money, let's go on. Try and broaden the scope of knowledge, because aid is not just about money. Again, I heard my opponent talk about failing leadership, and maybe that's one of the reasons why Africa has not been able to, he believes that maybe because of the leadership, Africa has not been able to move. Look, yes, we agree that we have failing leadership. We agree that the leaders in the various parts of the African continent have not helped us. Yes, we agree. But these same leaders are the people who keep going outside for help. Not just in money, not just with respect to giving money. They go for help with respect to even technological advancement. We go to, in Ghana, when Ghana Telecom couldn't cater for itself, what did we do? We sold Ghana Telecom to Vodafone to control it. Vodafone can make Ghana Telecom stable, and when we feel that we are good with it, then we can continue. This is not investment. We were not investing into Vodafone, or Vodafone was not investing into us. We found ourselves at the mercy of a failing company, and then we went for aid. So when you come and use even this one, I don't know how again you can say that this is investment. This is aid. Again, with respect to my opponent says that Africa has a lot of natural resources. Yes, we understand that Africa has a lot of natural resources. Yes, but what is the system on the ground? Are we able to use these natural resources? Are we able to use it to help ourselves? You find out that you mentioned Cote d'Ivoire having a lot of cocoa export to, yes, and they're able to gain a lot of money. Yes, we understand. Ghana did the same. I understand. The facts are there to see. But these natural resources that have been exported for income exchange or whatever it is, have we been able to use it to push ourselves beyond Africa beyond aid? Have we been able to use it to support ourselves such that Africa can confidently say, without aid? When you look at statistics, you can find out that Africa is one of the poorest continents. That is a fact. And so if you are saying that, yes, they have natural resources, yes, we understand that point. But my point...
Thank you very much, supporting speaker. Thank you very much, supporting speaker. It's a pleasure to have heard you. Thank you very, very much. Representing Luxumi. Right, so we're gonna also hear from the supporting speaker from Nux Lviv. And for the next 7 minutes, he's going to attempt to support his speaker. Let's go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. From the Encyclopedia and Foreign Definition of Foreign aid actually, as our opponent has said, that in the international transfer of capital, goods, or service from a country or international organization for the benefit of the recipient country or its population, aid can be economic, military, or emergency humanitarian, as our opponent has said, but I'm rather giving the definition from the British Dictionary, that the resources can be taken form of grant or consensual credit, and I emphasize consensual credit. So I want our chairman and the judge to debunk that statement he made. It is a consensual credit. Based on this definition, it's obvious that some foreign aids are in form of grant, especially when it's from the likes of international organization and non-governmental organization. Yes, he said it. But for example, the IMF, the World Bank, the UNICEF, all of them are not only do not receive African benefit from these organizations, other countries like Yemen, Colombia, Greece, they also benefit from these. Let us not shy away from these important issues. As of now, the greatest amount currently on loan from IMF is Mexico. Mexico is not an African country, it's a non-African country, and then Greece, also a European country. But let's look at the loan as a percentage of gross domestic product, the GDP. Liberia and Iceland are the highest with 8.5% and 7.5% respectively, according to the Guardian.com, because of the low domestic product Liberia has been producing. So when you bring your points up about Africa receiving aid, make sure you add your figures before you shame and belittle Africa. Come on. Also, Mr. Chairman, I don't regard help based on the consensual credit of foreign aid as practiced by IMF and some developed countries like China, the UK, America, and the others, but I classify those as foreign investment, of which it totally outside the context of this debate. So I employ the panel of judges to disregard those points made by opponents based on these points. Earlier, he made statement that it was colonialism. From the beginning, we clearly understand that they missed the point, trying to let us understand that it's neocolonialism. But I want us to understand that the foreign has not gotten anything to do with Africa, but it is our nepotized and our insatiable leadership that has brought Africa to this mediocre state. Now, in the following definition, foreign investment refers to the investment in domestic companies and assets of other countries by a foreign investor. Large multinational corporations will seek new opportunities for economic growth by opening branches and expanding their investment in other countries based on definition by Investopedia. So, as I said, let us understand that, Mr. Chairman, this act is not aid. This act is not help. This is not act of love. This act is rather exploitation, milking and condescending. I repeat, it is not aid, it's not act, it's not help, it's not love, but rather exploiting Africa. Mr. Chairman, he rather my opponent made mention of the pandemic. I would like you to avidly debunk and clear and fundamentally disregard the claims and point made at my opposing sitting associated with the COVID pandemic. I find the claims and points made by my learned opponents totally biased, unresearched, and absolutely inhuman, with a sense that no man is an island, and not only Africa as a continent received aid from other countries. If we continue blacklisting Africa this by Africans, then our future generations are still going to argue on this same motion over and over again. China in the early stages were in dire need of imported nose masks and hand sanitizers. Italy needed the intervention of Germany to transport some of their patients to Germany to receive treatment. Italy imported doctors from China and Cuba to aid in the treatment. Even the great America had a reform to import doctors to aid in the pandemic. Slovakia sending masks and disinfectant to Italy, while Australia is sending gloves and disinfectant to Croatia. Italy has now received several offers of assistance via the EU civil protection mechanism. So please, come on. Is this form only for Africans? No. And the situation where we all needed help, even Ukraine needed testing equipment from other countries. So the facts are clear. Yes, Africa needs help. And it is surprising that Africa has done an exceedingly great job in terms of the numbers of coronavirus. But not only Africa needed help, America, Italy, China, everyone needed help. Also, Mr. Chairman, debaters, my learned opponents, listeners, and the judges out there, from the office of the against motion, it's pretty evident that on the motion of Africa Beyond Aid is a hoax in such a neo-colonialist continent. We have provided viable and resourceful fact to totally say that the motion is false. Let me reiterate. Foreign aid has got nothing to do with Africa, and that if Africa is to be developed, then we need to change the narrative of our poorly constructed, nepotized, insatiable, and failing leadership and government. My opponent earlier made mention of Dr. Congo receiving DR Congo receiving help from the Western agency, but it's clearly not true. Let him reset. It was from WHO, and all of us needed help from the WHO. You can't tell me that we all needed help. Foreign aid is not a problem of Africa. Please, we all as a nation, we as a continent change our mindset towards being dependent and will achieve more than we could ever become. Africa as a continent is well graced and equipped with an astronomical amount of resources, both in terms, I state, it has got nothing to do with the foreign. It is our nepotized, poorly constructed leadership and governance, which is making Africa look in the eyes of the world that we are dependent on them. Africa is literally not dealing in aid from developing countries, but rather Africa is involved in a business scheme, as my earlier speaker said, with foreign countries. Multinational enterprises from developed countries are expanding their investment. Listen to me. That even when we needed human resources of Africa contributed to make their country beautiful, the world-renowned architect David Adjaye was contacted to build a national museum. Come on, it wasn't a European, it wasn't a British, it wasn't American, it was just this African to build an architect to build this National Museum of African Museum History in Washington, America, in Russia. You can check them up, you can have them all. But see, with all these said, as Africans seeing all these as a foreign aid, because of the oblivious action of the media, they will do this in conveying all the information across the globe, especially news with Africa descent, showing the negative past, mostly ignoring some positive and great achievement Africa has independent. To cap it off, Mr. Chairman, my fellow debaters, let's all come to an agreement. I am proud to say that Africa is actually doing well, managing its own affairs without extending its arm to foreign aid. Africa is beyond aid. It's not hoax, but rather a reality. The only point is that our leadership is just failing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, supporting speaker for Nux Lviv. And that is great. In fact, I've been enjoying the debate. I've been enjoying the debate. And I can see from our YouTube channel and from our listeners via Radio Power UA that all of them are enjoying the debate. Series of, support from your fellow, city members, just cheering you up on our YouTube page, and we are having a lot of, messages also on Radio Power UA. A listener from Sumy, Ukraine, Shekinah, said that she's listening to the debate on Radio Power UA. I guess she's enjoying it. We have Emmanuel from Ternopil saying that interesting debate, a laudable initiative, Nux Ukraine, kudos to the participants to you. And many other more. So it's been amazing. And it's such a great time that you guys have been giving us. And I believe that everyone who has been listening, taking time to listen to you, has been enjoying the session. I've been enjoying it so many different ways, right? So I just can't imagine that this is going to end soon, but then that is how it is. That is how it is. But I believe that many of these are going to come subsequently and you'll get to enjoy. So just get yourself connected to Nux Ukraine, our social media platforms, get yourself connected to Radio Power UA, and you get to hear many of these and other educational or educative programs as well. Right, so the last thing we are going to do is to take a summary from the participants, each city. Then time will be given to the judges to collate the results. Then after some time, we will declare the results to you and see and get to know which city is going to meet Nux Harkov on Saturday for the grand finale. I believe that everyone in Harkov is just waiting, cheering up, waiting to meet either of you. So they just can't wait to meet either of you. So they will give you a very tough contest on Saturday. So and I believe that either of you can really meet up as well. So we are going to the summary. So let's take the summary for 5 minutes from Nux Sumi. Nux Sumi, let's get a summary from you for 5 minutes.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, again, my opponent came up with a point and said that it's good you bought into my idea by saying that everybody needs somebody. If you say everybody needs somebody, no man is an island, so everybody needs help from someone. Everybody can depend on someone. I believe my opponent has a good religious background, and from the Bible, we found out that even at the beginning, God created Eve to help, or to be an aid, or to be a support again to Adam. And so we agree that African, even the first half of the topic, African beyond aid, is something which is impossible because everybody needs somebody. If that's the case, then Africa needs aid. Africa needs help from somewhere. And so if you, again, you can say this, then it looks like you don't know what you are saying. You keep going around the same circle. You're making a point and then you are exposing yourself to the general public. You have said that no man is an island. If no man is an island, that means that everybody needs somebody. Everybody needs help. Africa beyond aid is not possible. Africa needs aid. If that is what you have said, then I throw this again to you, that Africa beyond aid is just a fallacy. It's a hoax. Now, again, you make mention of the fact that we said COVID-19. I want to state emphatically clear that nobody mentioned COVID-19 here. If you are listening, listen with rapt attention, as your principal speaker said. And I want you to go back to a statement. Listen with rapt attention. We did not mention an issue of COVID-19. Again, you mention, so when you raise a point against COVID-19, whether you are looking into the skies, we never said anything of that form. Again, you made mention of the fact that, yes, you made mention of the fact that Africa, the aid that we are doing is because of nepotism and other factors. You are in Africa, you are an African, you know the system in Africa. We keep going and seeking for help from other countries that are more developed. Again, the aid that we are asking for you made mention of the fact that it was developing countries. No, we go for aid. Most African countries, and the statistics are the most African countries go for aid and help from developed countries. Our own nation, Ghana, from which I believe you come from, you see as time without number, seeking for help from other countries to help develop the technological aspects of it. And again, I mentioned Vodafone coming in and helping us. You find us selling our national agencies. You find us selling so many national companies. Why? Because we cannot keep these national companies. And then again, we seek for help for people to come help us maintain these things. When you mentioned foreign aid, you said foreign aid. I want to state emphatically clear that Africa beyond aid and foreign aid, yes, I agree that they are similar. But again, I want you to know that aid in simple terms has to be help. Aid can be monetary, my brother. Aid can be in the form of provision of knowledge. Aid can be in the form of development. Aid falls in so many categories. And so if you keep limiting yourself to money and quoting figures with respect to money, I want you to keep speaking about other factors. Do not limit yourself to money, because aid is not just with money. If you do that, then again, of course, you're always standing at the point of investment. But aid can fall in various factors. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very. That is all for your summary, right? Thank you very, very much for such an amazing time. Thank you very, very much. And that was the summary from Nux Sumi, and just amazing. Right. So let's go on to the summary from Nux Lviv for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My opponent, I actually don't get my opponent. From what he just said, he has agreed that it's an aid. But the motion actually is that Africa beyond aid. Then we are all agreeing to the fact that we all need help. But the motion actually, Mr. Chairman, you are aware, you know, everyone knows the motion. It is Africa beyond help. We are not saying that everyone does not need help, but the motion is that they are speaking that Africa is beyond help. But I want to actually say, we all need help. He said it, we all need help. Then the point of we all needing help as in the countries, which also debunk that statement that everyone needs help. The US, the UK, everyone needs help. But I want you to bring to the attention of the House that what he's trying to make us to understand and trying to put in across is that Africa is not beyond aid, as we agree, but we are letting us know we all need help, but we are not beyond aid. We all need help. But it is because of the way our leadership has been constructed, our governance. He also made mention that we did not talk about the COVID-19. He made mention of a recent pandemic. And actually, I don't know which pandemic, if there's COVID 2020 or COVID-18. We know COVID-19. Of late, it was Madagascar who brought some herbs, of which WHO had heard and believed that it was, we all know that it was helping in some way. I don't know the mechanism or the biochemistry which was helping their people to be healed. Come on. Africa, in one way or the other, helping themselves in their own natural resources, on their own human resources to help build Africa. But it's just that the poorly constructed and that way of our leadership is not making Africa to be presented to the outside world. Foreign aid, as I said, you made it clear that it's help, but we are not saying that Africa is beyond help. Everyone needs somebody. Everybody needs somebody. Everyone needs help. The UK needs help. The US needs help. Foreign aid is not the problem of Africa. And if it was we as a nation, we as a continent change our mindset towards being dependent and would achieve more than we could ever because Africa as a continent is well graced and equipped with an astronomical amount of resources, both in terms of human and natural resources. What would have these Western countries gotten from sports if African weren't recruited into their teams? So they would be playing among themselves. You can name the best players now, those big ones. They are all in the field of sports. If they had not recruited them, they wouldn't be able to help them build that famous sports and club they know. And Africa is literally not developing from countries, but rather Africa is involved in this business scheme of investment, as we had already said. Multinational enterprises from developed countries are expanding their activities. Lastly, we see all these as foreign aid because of the oblivious action, as I said, the media plays in conveying information across the globe, especially news with African descent, showing the negative past mostly and ignoring some positive and great achievements Africa has independently. So not all of all capital human resources we spoke about that, some human resources, as we see that these countries have built, were due to the fact that they had been taking these Africans, as we know, building their own countries, because they took our very own people. The US took our very own people to build their countries, and now they are doing very, very so well. And they are, in as much as investing into our countries with the aim of benefiting. So we do not clearly say, and we want to say that we are not dependent on them. We are all managing our own resources, but it's our leadership, our poorly constructed leadership and our governance, which is not helping us. So to cap it all off, I'm very proud to say that Africa is actually well managing its own affairs without extending its arms to foreign aid. Africa beyond aid is not a hoax, but rather a reality. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for such an amazing time. It's been great. It's been great, and thank you for staying with us for all this while. Now, if I've been listening to us, if you have been watching us, you can testify to such an amazing contest, and we are just glad that you could join us. We are glad that you could join us. Now, judges are going to, get the opportunity to analyze everything and come out with the results. We are going to get some very good music from Radio Power UA, very good music on our YouTube channel as well, to just give the judges the time to get the results to you. If you have something to do, make sure to join us exactly 9 p.m. The results will be announced. So take note of that. Contestants, you can get something to eat. You can get something to relax on, and just get back to us at exactly 9 p.m. as we declare the results and get to know who is meeting Harkov in the final. Thank you very much and see you soon.
Soko, baby, we no go hear nobody. One kind of million. I live with my. Again. Junior. Re. Yes, yes. Wabamihu, mini wanadi. Don't be late. Minu, okay. Something different. Something different. I know the one thing there.
Entertainment and education live inside the heart of Ukraine's finest city, Ternopil. Radio Power UA.
Ah, you are Huh? You Ladies and gentlemen. I'm jumping up. Oh, this one is for you. Yes, you know I could. So hard to say goodbye. And then you bring it in the dear group. One more time again, when you a girl. Opido Bay, my dear, and girl. Me, my, I would just say, I go. Monica,
Entertainment and education live inside the heart of Ukraine's finest city, Ternopil. Radio Power UA. Now you wait.
my show. She said I know this slow. She simply wanna know if she could get to go to paradise with me like I be saying in my flows. She said I be the music while she moves to busy. And when she see me moving on the road, you know it's easy. She said she know the fit sick when she see my whip cruise on the highway. So she screamed, hi, baby. I said, hi, don't be shy. Come with me for a ride. Pretty lady, show your pride. It's your time, be my bride. This is why I don't like to do favors with my eye. I wish say I could fit. Let this be a simple ride. She wanna do it again. She wanna do it every day. I took her for a ride last night and I love her vibes, yeah. She was by my side last night and she loved my vibes, yeah. She said she has a secret and she wants to keep it. I can't believe that she doesn't want to go and leave this. She said she needs this. She said she wants to keep this. It's like my swagger is exactly what she just needed. She's got Steven. She says he just is sleeping. So that be why she always find herself creeping. She want the feeling. Oh, she want the feeling. Eh, she want the feeling.
Radio Now, you might. Your online radio. The new online radio that makes you happy.
Can't believe I let you do this. Can't believe I never saw this. Wish I could say, but can't pretend. Look, I would do it in a heartbeat. You never deserved my love. When I
Radio Now, you might. Your online radio. The new online radio that makes you happy.
fighting to stay, holding on to you, laughing wholeheartedly, 'cause I'm into myself, and it looks so stupid standing up for you, but you see, I can never leave you, if you ever think that I'll ever leave you, you're wrong, you said, I can never leave you, if you ever think that I'll ever leave you, you're wrong. And now that I know it's wasting my time, was it ever worth it? I know. And now that I know it's wasting my time, was it ever worth it? I know. But what happened to promises?
Radio Now, you might. Your online radio. The new online radio that makes you happy.
What happened to promises? Did you take me home too? Did you ever have to let me go? Time is not a doctor, carry your scars. Came home white and became to be black. I came home, my tears said it's nothing again. I was wasting my time. Was it ever worth it? I don't know. And now that I know I was wasting my time, was it ever worth it? I don't know. Now that I know I was wasting my time, was it ever worth it? I don't know. I don't know.
omniscience. I make them believe this and hear loud with the hopeless. It's so childhood, that is me. I get money and I'm my pockets. Get money and I'm my pockets. I get money and I'm my pockets. Get money and I'm my pockets. And I told them, yeah, Kelly on the bill like the big six. I need the funnest on side like forensics. Lost more than the brother like Rondo. I know you smell good when you see me as an actress. Yeah, I'm reckless. The flight kid so clean like the Empress. So I keep it like my juice in the dipset. So I keep it like my juice in the dipset. I got hoes in the pants. Y'all come second in the Lambo. 25 shots like a Rambo. Coming back six every day. El Pasico, Mamacito. I got hoes in the pants. Y'all come second in the Lambo. 25 shots like a Rambo. Coming back six every day, though. I got hoes in the pants. Y'all come second in the Lambo. 25 shots like a Rambo. In the bad bitch now. El Pasico, Mamacito. I got hoes in the pants. Station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
Yeah.
Your love they hide me like baby bully. Yeah, we supposed to link up, but you be Johnson. Hey, but if your love they hide me like baby bully. Oh baby, don't leave me, don't leave me. I got a pocket full of money and all I wanna do is spend it on you. This feeling is killing me, baby. Tell me what life for you. Cause your love is irrelevant, and I do like your belly dance. Your pose is elegant, yeah. Baby, you be on mama. Oh, yeah, wash it, banana.
I remember what you told me. Say I'll be bad girl, gonna put you on me.
Your love they hide me like baby bully. Yeah, we supposed to link up, but you be Johnson.
Shantinos, them my drop the money, flexing life. Yeah. I can do as I like, make I dance and party all night. But the joke, don't be your anybody know. Yeah, my folk, I come with me, Jack. But the joke, don't be your anybody know. Yeah, my folk, I come with me, Jack. I love fight. Jack, I fight you. I love fight you. Jack, I fight you.
Oh, yeah. Too much water in the vessel. Too many no longer to settle. Money easy, you have changed since we met you. Yeah, but then you know that Pastor, you don't be a laji. Shuku shaku maraji. Tipa o yato si aji. Isha o yato si baji. Mo le jo. Orí ni o jẹ anybody lo. Yeah, my phone. Oh, yeah, come with me, yeah. Check out the faji.
Jack, I fight you. Jack, I love fight you. Jaga Fachi.
So even though we face difficulties,
Radio Power UA.
self-evident that all men are free.
How can the king be a slave in another land? Tears breaking down like an avalanche. Busy taking selfies overseas, closing pages to chapters we never land. Pages to chapters I mean, the scars and the bruises, the pain that was never meant for the Trinity. Black the people, black the pride, black the strength. Love the people, keep their pride and protect. That they love you, they don't. Anticipating what you see on TV. Self-distracted cause they got their remotes. Taking Africa to the promised land, no care, help me make it black very bold. Watching Africa thinking like Marcus Garvey's getting seasick. Stand for fighting to my brother, my sister. Mama, I made it. American dreams on the minds of the youth. She went to reggae, go beba naka baka sahakali. Told life was a bed of roses till I saw the graveyard last night. Dead bodies in the coffins. Fed up acting like a puppet. Blindfolded robots. Oh God, we never get to see the profit. But we stuck in the farms, harvesting the pain. Cause we reap what we sow. Tears keep thrilling my heart and it's filling my soul. But we still live like the soldiers, bro. Africa's mine and Africa's yours. Let nobody take it.
With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. If this work together will be the day.
Attention is best bid in Paris and Dallas. Help this mother sleep down and got us. Went to
Radio Power UA.
the ladies start dressing for food. Day and night I keep on contemplating on the biggest question. Who is good for nothing? The youth in front of the television or the leaders who scared to tell the vision. But what goes around comes around, roller coaster. Black and them prophets, I'm from the toaster. Africa stand up, we getting closer. Promised land, you know my GPS. Let nobody stop you, you a genius. Coming to my Marcus Garvey, Gaddafi. Fought with the stigma like calling grades. I'm not calling for soldiers, I'm calling brains. That's teaching time is worth a fortune. You slay your brother, they keep watching. Lord,
One day right there in Alabama, a little black boy and black girl will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls and sisters and brothers. I have a dream today.
kidding.
Our objective is African Union now. There is no time to waste. We must unite or we perish. I am confident that by our concerted effort and determination,
So they want push you, yeah. Activity to the
fight for the class. You go your hands up in the air. Tell us what you do it up again. Show us all your papers. Waiting on the rifles on your head. Telling you to say you're risky. Risky, yes, they call me risky. With cops, we don't want to keep to kill. Risky, yes, they call me risky. Risky, they tell me risky. Risky, yes, they tell me risky. With cops, we don't want to keep to kill. Risky, yes, they call me risky. They tell me risky. They want to wipe me out the too much. Them that we get in our life. Nothing of the breakers now. Be upon a team of people. Black Lives Matter. One time and one time only. Show key to the same all about the world. This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
Ready for your power UA.
Your online radio. The new online radio that makes you happy. Let's go. This is your radio. Your station.
Music, entertainment, and education live inside the heart of Ukraine's finest city, Chernobyl. Radio Power UA.
I want to see your face. I want to dance. No time for anybody. I want to see your face. Start to party. Another well, I already tell lie, no be lie. Why won't you tell me why? What's everything from my mind? Why won't you tell me why? Whatever be the case, so baby don't go away. When I see your smile, it was my brain. Your love, 'cause I know go there, so love me now, love me make my love. Oh my baby, can you don't know? I will take you go every night you don't know. And if you want to money, I go give you more. Chop my city, chop my naira, chop my dollar. Yeah, baby, don't worry, I go marry you. Just be ready, baby, don't worry. I play, baby, your body, I'm ready. Oh my baby, can you don't know? I go take you go every night you don't know. And if you want to money, I go give you more. Chop my city, chop my naira, chop my dollar. I no go go, I no go go, I no go go, I no go go, only you baby, I feel to say, when you give me slow, when you give me slow, I know where they have me at the party. I'm sitting on the wet party. So for me what? What tell me what? So my phone what tell me what? If you don't know, tomorrow you're gonna everything. She's better to what you do. If you don't know.
Radio Power UA.
Your online radio. The new online radio that makes you happy.
Oh my baby,
Wait up, man.
Radio Power UA.
Your online radio.
all these roads, no love in my kid for me, I feel offload. Can't waste my time, come in, no me go. And I find it my life and I'm up the show. Some of them run them riches, some of them come the link, some of them just stick on just to depend upon the some of them cause a bad way, cut off them trees, some of them sell out to one done and the whole team, some of them lost them ways and them because them can't run from the truth. Spiritual, them can't kill you, see them try to shoot you. But get bad from the front like Mr. DJ Power. Because of the paper, most of my friends that don't know it. They tell them to take a bit, but them not pay me no attention. Now them simulator, same get a good computer. The thing I give them sleepless night.
Right. So I just want to start by apologizing for such extended time as promised to come your way with the judgment. We'll just go straight to it. But before then, we are going to have a small remark from our judge too. So if our judge too can give us a small remark of the debate, then the judgment will follow suit.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I'd just like to reiterate what our chair has said. We'd like to apologize for the time it has taken. This was no easy job. It was quite difficult to come by a conclusion, but we do have the results, and I will leave the chair to sort of announce that later. But I'd like to congratulate both teams. You did incredibly well. For coming this far is actually no small feat. So we'd like to, on behalf of all the judges, we'd like to congratulate you all. We'd also like to commend you on for taking your time to do this extensive research and being able to put your point across. We've just had some points for improvement that we think are important for both teams. So the first point was we noticed that both teams, especially with the lead, the principal lead, where both teams were actually reading off the screen, and we believe that a debate is supposed to show sort of your oration skills, and if you're just reading off the screen, and it was quite evident actually. We're not saying that you cannot have sort of notes to remind you of a thing or two, but I think moving forward, whoever moves into the final, that you keep this in mind, and that you'd be able to put your point across without having to read. That was the first thing. The second thing was, I think, again, it was mentioned that this wasn't communicated. So just keeping in mind that when you make a point, try and bring relevant evidences which support each and every single point that you make. So most speakers actually made a few statements that were not backed by evidence, and some evidences didn't seem to match up. So again, we would advise that next time, whoever's moving forward, or whenever you have another debate, make sure that you've got every single point you made is backed by evidence, and not just any evidence, or relevant evidence. And then the very last thing we wanted to talk about was consistency. I think both teams did lack a bit of consistency in their presentation. I think that's something that can be worked on. Overall, we think both teams did incredibly well. The timeliness, especially of the lead of the primary debaters, were actually very, very good. They all stayed on time, but these are the 3 points that we felt that needed to be worked on. We do congratulate you all once again. We commend you all, and best of luck to the team moving on to the finals.
That is great. That's great. Thank you very much, Judge Chu, for that great remarks. Right, so we are going straight to the judgment, and so as was said by the remarks, different things were taken into consideration to arrive at this point, and I believe that this is not just to prove that one is better than the other. You all have just shown such great, expertise in your oration, in your researching, and many other things that we wish that we will crown you all. However, Harkov is ever ready to meet one of you. So we will need to get one of you that will be able to meet Harkov based on the points that needed to be awarded. Right, so we had 3 judges that gave their marks based on what they heard and they saw from your presentation. Judge one gave, I'm just going to give a summary presentation of the marks after that, and you will need the breakdown of judges, every part of the judgment. You can contact the academic directorate and you get a hold of that. But I'm going to give just a summary of it for your notice. Right, so Judge 1 gave Lviv 54%. I'm giving it in a percentage form. No, it's not even percentage, just in a mark, because every participant was supposed to be awarded 50 points. So because they are 200, so that is what you need to take note of that. So Judge 1, so what it means is that the overall score for every team is supposed to sum up to 200 because of that 100 in different rounds. So Judge 1 gave Lviv 54. Judge 2 gave Lviv 63. Judge 3 gave Lviv 58.5. Judge 1 gave Sumi 55. Judge 2 gave Sumi 58. Judge 3 gave Sumi 63. So in the end, Lviv had 175.5 and Sumi had 176, emerging as the winner for the semi-final competition. So what it means is that Sumi is going to meet Harkov at the grand finale on Saturday. And I want to congratulate you for that. And I want to also congratulate you, Lviv, for such an immense and great presentation that you came away with. I want to wish you the best and hope that subsequently you'll come up with a very strong force as well and get to emerge the winner. However, we will end your journey here and just congratulate Sumi to just go ahead and represent this particular sect against Harkov on Saturday, which is going to be an amazing contest. Thank you all for joining us today. We are coming your way again on Saturday for the grand finale of the maiden debate competition. It's going to be amazing and you just can't afford to miss it in any way. So stay glued to us. You get to know the announcement about it, the publicity of it all. Then we will just catch you up on Saturday. Thank you and have a good night.